Welcome to Self Wellness. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Maha with Mike. Today, we're going to be diving into some incredible topics. We're going to be touching on the tariffs that Trump is promising is going to be happening to some of the pharmaceutical companies that are importing from other parts of the world. And we're going to be joined by one of our favorite people who's never been on the show, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, who we just found out is an American activist for the very first time. I would also say that she's an OG in the health movement, and she is probably one of the people that I hold dearest in my heart for what she's done for protecting my children. And we're also going to be bringing in Jim Hoft, the founder of the Gateway Pundit, and we're going to be talking about a certain person who the government thinks should have the death penalty. So real quick, I'm going to have my producer, Drake, roll a quick clip, and then we are going to bring in Dr. Sherry Tenpenny.
On the pharma tariffs, Mr. President, you've been talking about the pharma tariffs and what to expect there. Are you going to exempt life-saving medications, or what can we expect there?
Well, we'll be announcing it soon, but we have to bring pharmaceuticals, drugs and pharmaceuticals back into our country.
And what's the rate you're looking at? 15%,
We're looking at a certain number that will be enough to get the drugs and the pharmaceutical companies bringing their product into our country.
So
We never want to have to rely on other countries for that, like we did at COVID.
Sir, on the car tariffs and just the reciprocal tariffs, a lot of countries are making gestures, including Britain, which is talked about reducing
They want to make
digital
deals.
services. They want to make deals.
They do.
Are you in a mode, or
Well, it's possible if we can get something for the deal. But, we've been taken advantage of for 40 years, maybe more. And it's just not going to happen anymore. But yeah, I'm certainly open to that.
Do you think
If we can do something where we get something for it.
Mr. President, do you plan to?
Would that happen before the tariffs are announced?
No, probably later.
Probably.
Mr. President, do you?
It's a process. Do it probably later.
That's a lot to swallow there. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's interesting. I've never been on anybody's show where they've called me an American activist, and I really kind of like that. Thank you.
Well, I think credit is due. And again, it was our producer who probably was looking and said, this is somebody who's fighting for America. I've always known that you're globally recognized as a leader in exposing vaccine dangers and medical corruption. I don't think there's many people out there with more hours. When I was reading your bio and it said 50,000 hours of research spanning more than 25 years, I said, was that just the hours last year? Because I can imagine it's much, much, much more than that. And you also were one of the first medical professionals to sound the alarm on vaccine risk. You really paved the way for many of America's voices, but more importantly for mom and dads out there, right? That relentless dedication to uncovering truth. And this goes beyond public health policies. But you're exposing vaccine-related injuries, and you've also probably, I would say, you're one of the most sought-after educators and speakers in the field. I put you up there with Dr. Edward Group, and I got to shake your hand for the first time when we were at the Healing for the Ages conference, and you're incredible.
Well, thank you. And it really has been. I started this quest in September of 2000 when I went to a conference at the National Vaccine Information Center, and I was there for 3.5 days, took copious notes, which I still have, by the way, in my cabinet over there. And I came home and I said, how did I possibly miss this? I've been in medicine since 1985, and I've had my own clinic. I was board certified in emergency medicine. I was the director of a level 2 trauma center for 12 years. And I came home and I said, I should probably look into this. I grew up in a chiropractic family, was not vaccinated as a kid, had all the age appropriate stuff of measles, rubella, chickenpox, mumps. I had pertussis twice. And, am alive and healthy and well to talk about it. So I never really gave vaccines much of a thought until I went to that conference. And I heard doctors, lawyers, parents of vaccine injured children, bench researchers talk for 3.5 days about problems with vaccines. And I thought, I should probably look into this. So when I started looking at, I thought, well, where do I start? I guess I'll start with the CDC. They're supposed to be the experts in this stuff. And I started reading papers from the CDC, and each paper I read, I thought, this can't be it. This can't be what this multi-billion-dollar industry is built on. And so from that point forward, seriously, I'm either writing about, researching about vaccines and problems with vaccines 24 hours a day, with the exception of when I'm asleep. And so it's become sort of a God thing for me, that God told me. I asked him one time, I was crying about some of the things I had learned about the pertussis vaccine. And I said, Lord, why'd you give me this to do? And why didn't you give me a go team, Tony Robbins, go team, rah, rah. And he said, because you're willing to do the work. And I heard that out loud upstairs in my upstairs studio, my office, and there was nobody else in the house but me. And I said, okay. So since September of 2000 till now, it's, April of 25, I've dedicated my life to letting people know vaccines have never been proven to be safe. They are not effective, meaning effective is not a synonym for protection. They are not necessary. And every single vaccine that someone takes, even if they only take one, at some level in your immune system causes some harm. And I can say that after almost 25 years and 50,000 hours worth of research.
So let me ask you briefly, because I could talk with you about vaccines, or bioweapons, whatever you feel more comfortable calling them, because I think you above all people understand the amount of heavy metals that are being found in these shots are not acceptable. But more importantly, one of the topics today that I would love to, get your opinion on is pharma industries are lobbying right now for Trump to, for the phase tariffs. They're begging them to stop. Do you think this is just are they just dancing around the inevitable? I mean, he's expected to unveil a massive tariff plan today. And I would love your opinion. I'd love your opinion on that clip that we just saw. And, pharma right now is shaking in their boots because a lot of these drugs are imported from other countries.
Well, it's interesting that the wealthiest industry in the world is whining about this. Of course, if I was the president of or the CEO of a large pharmaceutical company, of course I would say, wait a minute, you can't do this, that it's going to take us 8 to 10 years to build factories in the United States, which is just nonsense. I mean, it's for one thing, I looked it up. As of 2023, the United States is home of approximately 2,400 pharmaceutical manufacturing establishments, encompassing both single location companies and multi-location firms, primarily in California, Florida, and New Jersey. So even though they do get a lot of the active ingredients like the adjuvants and things like that from overseas, well, they should be taxed or tariffed heavily because they do nothing but cause harm. They cause harm in all age groups, and perhaps this will be a way for them to reformulate these toxic injections that are going to be injected into children starting at one day of life. And so they've got locations here in the country that are already well established. Can't they just ramp them up? I mean, instead they're kind of like, oh dear, you can't charge us. We've got life-saving drugs for everyone that is going to create a drug shortage. I don't believe it for a minute.
And neither do I. And you're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars, and they're
Exactly.
whining about needing a little bit more of protection for the ingredients that they're importing. I think it's just absolutely malarkey. And more importantly, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, when Bobby started really campaigning, the word that he threw out there, and I think this is where, like Dr. Group finally felt the angels rising above him, is when they were talking about nutraceuticals, right? The things that can actually reverse conditions that are in the body when you start feeding the body what it needs. That should scare those. I mean, I know it scares those pharmaceutical industries because, look at companies like Eli Lilly and Pfizer who have been around for how many dozens or hundreds of years, and they haven't cured a single disease?
Very good. And it's so true. And, the sad part is that so many of the pharmaceutical industries have bought up the nutraceutical companies, have bought up the vitamin companies, have bought up Whole Foods and different ways because they knew that this was the way that the large segment of the general public was moving. And as they were moving in that direction, Big Pharma wanted to have a piece of that pie. So that they have long infiltrated into that movement.
Yeah. Which is why, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I'll tell you and I'll ask you if you think it's a good idea or not. But you've heard of the CDC before, obviously, correct?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So I have a version of the CDC, and it's called the Chronic Disease Crusade, or what's better known as the Chronic Disease Cruise. I floated around the idea that we get some of the sickest people in the world and we get them away from 5G, we get them away from poisoned water, and we let them spend 60 days on a ship where we can control what they eat, what they drink, what they breathe, how they exercise, and just mark the results of what happens. I think it would be the largest controlled study ever done worldwide. But how incredible would it be to see what we could do in 60 days if we got people taking the supplements that the body needs? And I know you're a huge fan of from the videos that I've been seeing, and I don't know why Instagram serves me up Zeolite commercials. I never type it in, but you've been popping up recently in my Instagram, I think because I follow you, and you've been a huge fan or an activist for Zeolite.
Yeah, we've been a big fan of and promoting Touchstone Essentials Zeolite spray and their other products. They've got really terrific products over there. They've got one that's called Glucose Control that takes away all of your cravings. They've got one that's called Boost that I take 2 of those about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon when you're starting to feel saggy, like you want to have a nap, but you just couldn't stomach the thought of more coffee. You can take 2 of these and it really does just kind of wake you up and make you feel pretty alert. It has got like green tea extract and other herbal types of products in it. And so I think that your study would be phenomenal, because remember, the only thing that continues to turn the crank of the medical industrial complex is healthy children. So when children are born, there are about 77,000 live births per week in this country, which is a guaranteed customer base for the pharmaceutical industry through the vaccine sector of that industry. And if there's 77,000 live births per week, and let's say 90% of those kids get 3 shots at birth, which is synthetic vitamin K, hepatitis B, and now synthetic RSV, and moms have gotten 4 to 5 shots during pregnancy, which moms now get the flu shot, pertussis shot, RSV shot, a COVID shot, and if you're Rh negative, you also get a RhoGAM injection. And all of that crosses the placenta and goes into the baby. So the largest and most sought after commodity by the pharmaceutical industry and the entire medical industry, by the way, are newborn babies. Because if you can crush that child's immune system and their health at birth, or somewhere between birth and 1 year of age, you now have customers for life. Children now get approximately 20 shots by the time they're 6 months of age. They get approximately 30 shots by the time they're 1 year of age, and they get approximately 40 shots by the time they start kindergarten. Then when I say this a lot, and I've said it a lot with the whole MAHA movement, to make America healthy again, unless we address the fact that children get injected with 30 jabs of foreign matter by the time they're 1 year of age and old enough to sit in a high chair and have their first food additive, high fructose corn syrup laden meal, their immune system and gut and brain have already been damaged. And so making America healthy again has to start with pregnant women and stopping injecting them and stopping injecting children at 1 day old with vaccines that contain aluminum and polysorbate 80, and then all these other injections that they get by the time they're 1 year of age. We must pull the rug out from under that. And unfortunately, the pharmaceutical industry will protect the vaccine industry to the death because it is what drives everything. I mean, if children they have asthma, allergies, ADD, ADHD, insulin-dependent diabetes, a long list of neurological problems, cancer, all of those things from the time they've been injected at birth with this litany of foreign matter. That is what drives the parents to take these kids to doctors and subspecialty doctors who order subspecialty expensive tests and MRIs and CAT scans and do all these procedures. And if they have cancer, then chemotherapy, and on and on and on. Now take a look at that and compare that to a completely unvaccinated child. They're not on daily medications. They don't really get sick. They get an occasional cold. They're not snotty. They don't have ear infections. They're bright. They're inquisitive. They're ahead of their milestones on their growth chart. And people will look at those children and go, "Gosh, that's it. He or she must be a genius. Look at this." And I'll say to them, they might be a genius, but truthfully, they're normal. This is what they should all look like if they're not poisoned from the time they are in the womb.
Which, brings up a greater question, and I'd like to ask you right here on Maha Mike. Maha with Mike is definitely, the people's movement. This is not my show. I like to bring honor to God, our creator. I tell everybody one of my favorite people who ever walked this earth, way behind Jesus Christ. But Dr. D.D. Palmer, the founder of chiropractic, he said the power that made the body can heal the body. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, what is more important right now for United States? Fighting geoengineering, where we have very little control above 60,000 feet. So you have all these states that are now banning geoengineering, knowing that the state level has no jurisdiction above 60,000 feet where the FAA can handle. Or should we be focused on repealing the 1986 Act?
I don't think that the 1986 Act should be repealed. I think that would open the gateway and we would end up with something worse. I think what needs to be repealed is the PrEP Act. And the PrEP Act that protects the pharmaceutical industry far beyond what the 1986 Act is. Remember, in the 1986 Act, we got VAERS, and with all the problems with VAERS and the underreporting and all the things that go on that could be improved and hopefully will be improved with the VAERS reporting system, if we repeal the 1986 Act, they may take that away. And they may come up with something else that will protect them even more. So I think we have to be very careful with repealing massive legislation like that and perhaps add addendums to it and to change them. But the PrEP Act, and I talk about that a lot in my upcoming book. My upcoming book should be out in 2 weeks, which is called Zero Accountability in a Failed System: How Big Pharma Weaponizes Vaccines, Public Health, and the Law. And so that will be out in about 2 weeks. And I don't think that repealing the 1986 Act will result in what we want in terms of protection, but repealing the PrEP Act will. And the PrEP Act is just dastardly. Now, comparing that to geoengineering, I think that that's not really an apple-to-apple comparison, but I agree with you that geoengineering is only going to go so far. It's a great step forward, but we're taking formaldehyde out of the water in a lot of communities. We're trying to save our air, save our water, but we need to save our children from this vaccination nation that we have developed.
The PrEP Act was invoked during COVID, was it not?
It was activated anytime that the head of HHS declares that there's a public health emergency and that the pharmaceutical industry can ramp up and start to develop what are called covered countermeasures, they're called countermeasures, that they are experimental drugs, like all of the bioweapons from COVID, the remdesivir, other drugs that were developed. There were like 20 different drugs that were developed during COVID. They're all protected from liability. And that the people that were damaged by the COVID vaccines, I can't call them vaccines, by the COVID jabs, are not covered under the VAERS program. They're covered under the Covered Countermeasure Injury Compensation Program that has not been funded by Congress, that has tight timelines, doesn't have an injury compensation table, and has really thrown the 1.7 million people that filed VAERS reports for COVID injuries, has literally left them in the lurch with no compensation whatsoever. And Secretary Kennedy can reverse that with a stroke of a pen. It has the PrEP Act coverage has been extended through 2029. He can cancel that immediately, and he can request for Congress to fund the countermeasure injury compensation program so that the people who have been so injured and so damaged by these dastardly bioweapons can get some relief and some medical help.
Wow. Absolutely. So maybe that's the next petition that we need to go. So let me ask you this, Dr. Sherry. What does it mean for the U.S. with them wanting to bring pharma here? Do you think it decreases the likelihood of something like COVID happening again? And if it really was a Wuhan, lab break, a lab leak, what does it mean for the United States with them wanting to bring more manufacturing here?
Well, I think it secures our pipeline a little bit better, not only for drugs that could be for some pandemic that they set up, but also for other types of medications that people are on. The thing that I'm concerned about is just bringing manufacturing here doesn't necessarily do anything to decrease the price of drugs that the general public has to pay. And it doesn't give Medicare the ability to negotiate for drugs. That the Medicare Act, the Medicare Act that was that was revised in 2005, there's a very short list of drugs on that bill that cannot be negotiated. And I don't think that just bringing the manufacturing here is going to change the financial structure, which at the end of the day, I think that that's what the Trump administration wants. I've heard him say more than once, why is it that the same medication here in the United States that is $2 to $5 a pill, you can get for 20 to 30 cents in another country. And I don't necessarily think that bringing manufacturing back into the country is going to change that financial structure.
No, not especially how many times it exchanges hands, right? Because you've got so many middlemen and you've got so many people that are putting their hands in the so-called cookie jar in this country that's adding unnecessary cost to the end person, which in all reality, I don't like pharmaceutical at all because I believe that there is a naturopathic approach, but I understand how hard it is for most of the country to change even the type of milk that they drink, let alone their orange juice, right? So if you're in a broken system where people can't enter that inner circle of understanding that what you put in is what you get out, for those people who need pharmaceutical, they shouldn't have to be having 6 or 7 middlemen between the manufacturer to the pharmacy where they go pick it up at.
That's absolutely true. And, I've had an integrative medicine clinic here in Cleveland, Ohio since 1996. I left my emergency medicine position and opened a clinic here to do integrative medicine since 1996. So I'm on the same page with you about the body can heal itself, which you made a reference to D.D. Palmer. I'm an osteopath, and I would say the same thing with Andrew Taylor Still, that the body can heal itself. There's structure-function relationships. The rule of the artery is supreme. Those are all principles of osteopathy. And so I've grew up in a chiropractic family taking vitamins from the time I was a little kid. My dad had bottles of chewable vitamin C in his office. And when he would give the kids an adjustment and they didn't cry, he would say, "I'll give you some candy if you don't cry." Well, what the candy was these chewable vitamin C tablets. And you had a choice of cherry or lemon. I remember it very, very well. So I grew up with that. So I do believe that that's really true. And that should be the primary medicine when people get sick. But I also know from experience and from, my own health that when natural products don't work, if there's something that you need above and beyond that, it's good that we have the pharmaceutical products. The problem is that our entire medical system, the only tool they have in their toolbox is a prescription pad. So they don't know anything about glutathione and NAC and all these other great products that can increase your nitric oxide level and improve your immune system. The only thing they know is suppressive medicine. And That's where the problem is that the money and the money to be made is all over here in sickness. Money is not in health. In fact, there was a statement by, I think it was somebody who said it was in the big industry. They were examining the, I can't remember who the name of the gentleman was, but they were examining the price devaluation of a hepatitis C vaccine. I'm sorry, hepatitis C medication. The medication came out because it really did eliminate hepatitis C. So you have this large percentage of people that hepatitis C, and they took the drug, and that number went down, and there were not as many people that were contracting hepatitis C as there were that were getting literally cured. And it was said in a mainstream media outlet, health and wellness is not a good business model. Well, think about that. And it's really true in an integrative medicine or a naturopathic clinic, is that people come in, they're sick, you get them better, and they go on about their life. So you're always having to kind of fill up the pipeline, where in conventional medicine, they get as many patients in to manage their care as they can. And I'm sure people have experienced the idea that, they try to make an appointment with a doctor and they say, we're sorry, the doctor isn't taking any new patients. He's completely full. Well, that doesn't happen in a holistic clinic because we get people well.
I absolutely love that. And I'm gonna, before we thank you and send you off with a humanitarian Maha with Mike virtual award, which cannot be mailed, it can only be shared forever on the ether, which is the internet. I'm gonna ask you to do me a huge favor before the end of the day. There's a little website out there called Instagram. My very big following on my other account was shadow banned, and I no longer have access to it. So now I have created a new account. It's called Maha with Mike. Maha with Mike, just like the show. I would love it if you could follow us on Instagram, and I will share this beautiful interview on there. I'll get some clips. If you need them, I'll send them to you as well. And it means a lot to me. I already follow you, so it should be easy for you to follow me. And then I will continue to share cutting news, anything that's coming out of the Health and Human Services Department. We've got boots on the ground. We've got 2 wonderful correspondents that are now at the White House. So we're always breaking good quality news. But before we send you off, and I do bring in my next guest, which in the beginning, I thought it was Jim, but now I found out it's actually Joe, which is awesome because he's even better looking. But here comes the award. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, on behalf of everybody in America and human society, we want to thank you for your unwavering faith and your ability to never back down from the pharmaceutical tyrants and taking a stance on vaccines and bioweapons. Maha with Mike gives you the Person of the Year award. We love you.
Aw, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and keep up the good work.
Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Guys, what a fantastic time it was having Dr. Sherry Tenpenny with us. But everybody's been asking, why should Luigi be getting the death penalty? Why are they seeking so hard to end this man's life? I am going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to be bringing in the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Joe.
Are you looking for monthly income without the risk of stocks? Well, here's something you won't hear about on CNBC. There's a unique way to collect royalty checks directly from America's most productive oil fields. No exploring, drilling, or operational headaches. You simply collect checks month after month. The best part? You can get started with just $25 through any brokerage account. The Oxford Club's chief income strategist, Mark Litchenfield, breaks down what he believes is the #1 loyalty royal play for 2025. So visit LindellOilBoom.com now to learn more. That's LindellOilBoom.com. That's LindellOilBoom.com now to learn more. That's LindellOilBoom.com. Stop buying oil stocks and start collecting oil royalty checks instead.
Thanks, Mike. What a great plug. All right. Well, we are going to roll a quick little video, and then we are going to be bringing in Joe Hoft from the Gateway Pundit. Stand by as we roll this quick video.
Yeah, coming to you live once again from our breaking news desk this morning, Mugo. And we just got this release from the U.S. Justice Department moments ago. I want to read to you part of it, coming from Attorney General Pamela Bondi's office. It says, quote, Luigi Mangione's murder of Brian Thompson, an innocent man and father of 2 young children, was a premeditated, cold-blooded assassination that shocked America. After careful consideration, I've directed federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty in this case as we carry out President Trump's agenda to stop violent crime and make America safe again. It goes on to say that the murder was an act of political violence and that Mangione's actions involved substantial planning and premeditation. I also want to mention that we knew that this was a possibility, Mugo, after Luigi Mangione was charged federally back in December. He first faced 11 state charges. That included murder as an act of terrorism, and this is in connection to the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Mangione has so far pleaded not guilty to those state charges, but the federal charges, they allow prosecutors to pursue the death penalty against him. Today, now, when we talk about capital punishment, AG Pam Bondi directing federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty in this case. We know Mangione has not yet entered a plea in that federal case, but prosecutors have already said that these 2 state cases and federal cases will essentially proceed on parallel tracks, with the state charges expected to go to trial first.
All right, guys, let's bring in Joe Hoft and ask him what he thinks about what we just saw, and I'll show him a painting that I had been working on.
I think you nailed it right there. That's the best picture of the day. There you go. Nice.
Come on.
Mike. Nice meeting you.
And you know what? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you spent 10 years over in the other side of the world, correct? You lived near Hong Kong for 10 years.
That's right. I sure did.
We probably could have had you. We probably could have had you join Dr. Sherry Tenpenny and talk about the importing tariffs, because of you being on the other side, you understand, how big this is. China's now the number 4 manufacturer of pharmaceuticals behind Ireland and Germany and Switzerland here in the United States. But talk to us about Luigi, man. Why is this getting so much attention now?
Mike, there's so much to talk about just there, what you mentioned with Hong Kong. Let me just mention that. I lived there for 10 years when Trump came in his first administration. I saw firsthand how he had impacted the China's economy significantly. And I think that was the reason. If you needed intent to drop the COVID bomb, that was it. Trump had crushed China's economy, and I'd seen it firsthand in Hong Kong. So those tariffs do work. China what they were doing is lowering their the costs on their goods to get into the U.S. at the same price before the tariffs, because they needed that market. What that did then to the local corporations in China is it crushed them, especially the ones with U.S. dollar liabilities. It was a mess what happened over there, and they don't want Trump back. So those tariffs do work, and the U.S. made a ton of money because China paid the tariffs. So it's a smart move by President Trump. Lots to talk about there with Hong Kong and China. But coming back to the States with this whole thing with this Luigi, I don't understand it at all. I don't think we know a motive yet. And yet they're filing not just state charges, but now federal charges so that Bondi can use the death penalty. I was talking to Jim moments ago about this case, and my brother Jim at Gateway Pundit, and he said it's like a shining object. I thought that was a good way to put it for Bondi. It's like, okay, here's this guy. This incident is totally bizarre. It certainly looked intentional. It certainly looked like he shot and killed this man on purpose. It looked like he knew what he was doing with his gun. I think some experts, as I recall back when it happened, said something happened to his gun there. He readjusted things and then shot this guy dead. So why he was targeting this man, I think, is still unknown. The man was, as you know, the head of United Healthcare, one of the largest healthcare organizations in the country, if not the largest. And this young man with 2 kids who was there in New York City, apparently for an investor event that he was putting on. When I worked in the corporate world, especially with this Fortune 500 firm in Hong Kong, this was something that was normal. The CEO, CFO of the corporation would go gather up investors. There'd be somebody on the team that put them together, get them there, so they can kind of give a show and tell of the things that are happening with their with the company that were exciting to encourage more investment in the company. So it sounds like that's the type of event that this guy was at. He's the president of United Healthcare. So he shows up early, and this Luigi's there and ready and shoots him dead. Why? The question, why did he do it? And then for Bondi, she's going straight for the death penalty. So I hope we can figure out and find out why he did it before he's, faces the death penalty.
And I want to say that, to me, I have very little knowledge of all the conspiracies surrounding Luigi and all of the things. It's not one of those stories that I have been very well prepped on, but I then again want to say that, I think the American public would continue to urge Pam Bondi to switch her focus back to Jeffrey Epstein and to the women that were raped and molested and sex trafficked here in Palm Beach County, at his estate, and also at Little St. James, and also his residences that he had over on the West Coast. Every time we get close and it starts gaining traction, it's like, now let's just, hey, everybody look over here. Yeah. Let's look over here at the left hand. Don't focus on this story over here on the right. We welcome people here in the United States, and we shake their hands for people who are responsible for thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths, and they call it war. But one person gets murdered, and that just goes to show you how far the pharmaceutical pull has inside of this country, how deep their pockets go. And I think that is very, very sad for the American public, because all we've ever wanted was transparency.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on there too. It's the shiny object, Epstein stuff. Like if Reid Hoffman's on that list, which it sounds like he is, and Bill Gates and others that have supported Big Pharma, et cetera, we need to know, because Hoffman just gave something like $14 million to that, botched up election last night in Wisconsin that I don't believe for an instance legitimate. So, this is, these people that are on that list may be, doing considerable harm to this country, and they need to be dealt with so they can't do it anymore, so that we can get this country back in order. And so, I'm with you. I had Tom Renz on my show yesterday talking the same thing. He spent the whole time saying, we've got to get to the bottom of the Epstein case. We've got to get the truth out on what happened and who's on that list, so they can't do any more damage, hurt any more children, and do whatever they do, which seems a lot very, very corrupt. So you're right. Why are we focusing on this one incident and wanting to use capital punishment on this guy when we've got Epstein over here that's got God knows how many people on the list that need to be dealt with from Bill Clinton on down? Doesn't make sense.
And I don't know if you dug into any of this, but I just find it so coincidental, that they find any way to rig the system. And I don't know if this is true. I do not have confirmed journalistic reports. I can only read what I read online. But did you hear that the McDonald's employee that called the police because she didn't call the tip line, they're not even offering her the reward that she was supposed to get for reporting him? I don't know if it's true or not, but for a 1.6 to 3.4 trillion, whatever the industry is worth, they're now denying the reward to the girl from McDonald's that called in the report.
That's unbelievable. I didn't know that. It's shocking, though. I mean, come on, give me a break. She did a public service, assuming this is the right guy that. He's still alleged right now, I guess. So, but you're right. That's outrageous.
Well, and that's the thing with alleged. I think here as Americans, we have so much skepticism on, the true narrative of what they want us to see and what we want to believe. With the power of AI and what's happening now, we're in uncharted territories. and for as smart as this guy was, the first thing that I looked into was, why would he have all of that stuff there in that backpack? It's almost as believable as the passport from a terrorist, falling out of an airplane and going through a bunch of concrete and landing perfectly at the bottom to be perfectly identified, going back to 9/11. It's just absolutely crazy. So what would you like to see with this Luigi case, that we could do a little bit better?
I think what American people in general want, no matter what it is we just want transparency. Just throw it all out for us to see so we can see the truth, so that at least what's presented in the courtroom, because so we can make a decision, that's accurate. Because so many of these cases, whether it even be President Trump's case in New York City with that Judge Merchan, his team wasn't even able to provide evidence. He couldn't, there's various things that, proved his innocence. It was a crazy case, but he didn't even have the opportunity to present that. So, all we really want, I think all of us for this country, is just a court that's not corrupt, that's transparent, and that does, and prosecutors, et cetera, that do an adequate job of getting to the truth, not getting to a target, but getting to the truth. So hopefully this guy isn't a target, but we don't know.
What do you think about his demand to be at all of the pretrial hearings? He's made it very apparent that he does not want to appear via Zoom for any of the pretrial hearings. I believe that has been the request of Luigi himself, not even his attorneys. I believe he said he wants to be there for in person.
That's interesting, isn't it? Makes you wonder if he knows something that that's not being told. Maybe he can. He'll be able to decipher. Maybe he thinks he's going to catch people in lies. I don't know.
Yeah,
so that's a unique request.
The one thing that you don't see in Zooms is the other people that are in the courtroom. You don't catch all of the facial mannerisms. You don't catch the tells. It's like guys who have been in the Secret Service or have been, in the military for a long, long time. They can tell if someone's lying just by the way that their eyeballs are moving. It's just the unconditioned, unless you train your brain to be able to know. And maybe there's something that, he does know. Maybe he wants to go there and try to catch the lie, or to be able to see if someone's being coached or someone's being looked at. So many times when you see the witnesses that are, controlled by, let's say, the mafia, right? There's always that guy in the back with the little black hat, and he's looking at the witness as they're testifying, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, absolutely. I saw it. He did it. And they get so scared. But I think that, this case really does remind me of O.J. Simpson, in the fact that a lot of the public is gathering behind Luigi. You saw in those videos, Free Luigi. They've got the big people out there. There's people that are coming to his circle saying, hey, what he did, whether you want to call it justified or they believe that he's being framed, he is getting a lot of support from the people out there that have been broken by the pharmaceutical and the medical system that we live in.
Yeah, good point. And certainly not a lot of love lost there for a CEO of a big company like United Healthcare, based upon really the last 10, 20 years of medical care in the U.S. Since Obamacare came in, as far as I'm concerned. I went to Hong Kong in 2011 and my healthcare was great. I came back here. I'm like, what's going on? The lines takes you forever to see a doctor. I'm in Florida. Takes you ever to see a doctor. You finally see one. Then it takes another long time to get to a specialist. It's just been nightmaric. I don't recall it this way when I left. And in Hong Kong, where I was at, it was basically free healthcare for everybody. If you wanted a particular, better care, you would have your own policy, your own insurance for private insurance, and you'd get into a doctor that day. I could call my local doctor, could be in there that day. If I had something wrong, he could send me for testing right away. And there was one instance where I think I had COVID in October of 2019. I didn't know it at the time. I'm real sick. I go see him. He has me take an X-ray that day. That evening, I'm in a hospital and diagnosed with pneumonia. So, and I was in a hospital 5 days, by the way, for that. Anyways, but that's how healthcare, I recall, used to be. Today in the U.S., it's just a nightmare. So there is a lot of resentment, I'm sure, against this medical system that's been, really butchered, I think, over the last few years and micromanaged, and it's a bit of a nightmare. And a lot of people also resent the fact that these big healthcare providers like United Healthcare make a lot of money. And so, there's definitely strong feelings against big pharma and against these large healthcare entities as well. That's been boiling for some time, especially after COVID, as you know.
Well, and it brings me back to back to biblical times, right? The Lord had said that all plants that were seed bearing were meant for man and our consumption, and I do believe wholeheartedly that everything that we've ever needed is already here, and that's why there's so much hate from the pharmaceutical industry about plants and for people finding, certain cures. You can't even use the word cure or reverse or any of that because of the fact that most of these plants can't be patented because they're just available. And the more and more that we find out that there are natural, actual cures, right? I'm not claiming to have cures for anything, but I do believe that the body can cure itself if you give it what it needs. I was sitting down with a guy who was in the pharmaceutical industry for 35 years. He was a doctor, and he walked away and he said, in good faith, I cannot continue to just use a prescription pad to coat the condition instead of getting to the underlying root cause. And he goes, I realized for 35 years I was contributing to a problem. And I said, what was the problem? He goes, if you've got a lake or a pond and it's dirty, you don't put more poison into the lake to clean it up. You put things in to reverse what got the lake to that condition in the first place. And I've never been able to not think about that when I think about walking in and the doctor says, here, we're going to give you this, but it might cause a side effect. And that side effect, we're going to give you this. But if you start to get diarrhea, we then can give you this. But if you get intestinal bleeding, we'll then write you a prescription for this. It's like, well, wait a second. I came in here with a headache, and now I've got 6 other conditions.
Right.
So, understandably, there are a lot of people that are frustrated with what's happening with Luigi. And I do think that this whole new federal investigation and coming in and going right for the death penalty, it's all over the news. Everybody's talking about it. And you did say you were talking with your brother right before you got on this. What's his take on why they're getting involved at a federal level?
Well, I think it's kind of what we talked about already. It's like we got Epstein over here, and there's a shiny object here. Hey, look, squirrel. Nobody gives a damn. I told him I don't give a damn. He goes, you're right. I don't either. I really don't give a damn. I want to get the big problems dealt with now. And this is just another murder in New York City. It's maybe not another one. There's something unique about it, but it's outrageous that we've got, like you said, Epstein, all of that sitting around. We got people that are on it that might be damaging this country as we speak. So, yeah, let's deal with the big situations first.
100%. So tell us what's going on with you guys over there. How's everything been going with you guys? And give us an update on your guys' state of affairs and your outlook for, the United States with our new Secretary of Health and Human Services, and with what Donald Trump has been doing in his first, you can almost no longer 90 days. I mean, we're coming up on that.
Yeah, right. He's had an incredible job so far. I saw a list yesterday. It was 50 things in 50 days for Trump that he's done. One of the items was that RFK, that he brought RF Kennedy on the team, and I think RFK knew it as well. That was the place to be, and it turned into for Kennedy. I think he felt like it was amazing that the place that that God wanted him was working with Donald Trump in this administration, but it's been a real miracle along with Elon there. So I think that's all great. We've been thrilled about Elon and all the work he's been doing. Doge is incredible. Bobby Kennedy's really just kind of getting on a roll here, I think. He's doing some great things. He's got a great cabinet for the most part. And, great things are happening. So that's really exciting. But it's, and quite frankly, that's been the big picture. It's been an incredible first, 50 days or so. So, actually more than that, but it's been incredible work for President Trump over this period of time. So overall, there's excitement. Gateway Pundit's obviously doing really well. It's gets a ton of traffic. Bobby Kennedy actually joined Gateway Pundit in a case a couple years ago based on censorship. I believe that's still going on. Made its way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court had a terrible ruling and said basically an issue of standing that we hear all the time now, which is outrageous. So that they don't have to really look at what's going on. And so, but that case is still alive. That was involved with Missouri and Louisiana. And there was this case with Bobby Kennedy as well with censorship. So we're still fighting for that. And that's a big job. I mean, the media is toxic. It's still toxic. It's always toxic. It's been toxic for the last 10 years since I've been working with and supporting the Gateway Pundit. It's just a nightmare of what they put through the people that are telling the truth, like those of us at Gateway Pundit and other sites. I mean, we just saw all these people get swatted recently. Owen Schroyer from InfoWars. I mean, if you're telling the truth, you're going to get attacked. If you're effective, you're going to get attacked with this the regime that's still in place. I mean, you talk about Pam Bondi. One thing I've been critical of is why hasn't she gotten rid of more people in the DOJ and FBI? I saw these people in the DOJ cheer Merrick Garland on his last day. I saw him recently cheer this FBI guy, director in New York City when he was fired related to the Epstein files. So anybody who's cheering these people on shouldn't be around either. I mean, that's you've got the right to free speech, but if you're in part of the government and you're supporting somebody who's a criminal, I don't think you should be there. So I think there's a lot of work to do with everything from healthcare to justice, two big issues. And then, of course, I think a big issue, especially for me, I've written 3 books on the 2020 election, talking about the steal. And my background's in audit and finance. And that's why I wrote these books. These elections aren't certifiable. They're still not certifiable. Last night, we had another example in Wisconsin where it happens that the conservative loses to a radical communist woman judge who somehow squeaks out this lead, and yet the state votes 60-40 for voter ID. It doesn't make sense. The numbers don't make sense. Of course they don't. The reason they don't make sense is because they don't make sense, and the controls are missing throughout our entire election process. So to me, that's been a big deal ever since I saw the 2020 election, to get the truth out about that. And because of that, we get attacked as well. So that's part of the job here, though, is if you're getting attacked, that means you're doing the right thing. So we just keep charging ahead and there's no option but the truth, right?
Well, and it's just kind of like, you were talking about judges, and when you talk about Pam Bondi saying that she wants to make America safe again by, voting for this death penalty for Luigi. Well, what about James Boasberg, right? Who said, I don't think that these Venezuelan gang members should be deported on the airplanes. And he's trying to reverse that. Why aren't we covering that? Why aren't we? Because wouldn't that definitely be part of making America safe again? If you've got somebody that belongs to a gang?
It's outrageous, isn't it? There was a great some interviews yesterday. Newt Gingrich yesterday was on fire as he laid out the historical significance of what's going on. And in past years, like Thomas Jefferson, they just got rid of the judges, is what he did. John Adams brought in a bunch of judges right before he left office, and Kennedy was stuck with these radical, in his opinion, judges, and he got rid of them. They just working with Congress, they just eliminated their positions and got them out. And I think that's what we should do. These judges aren't judges, and Newt went on and on saying, Andrew Jackson just ignored the judges back when he was president that were pushing radical ideas. He says the strongest branch is not the judicial branch. That's the least strong, and it was made that way because these early the founders of this country didn't trust attorneys and judges. Imagine that. And so they wanted to limit their power. It was a brilliant talk historically from Newt Gingrich yesterday, and just saying the president's just going to have to ignore their rulings if the Congress doesn't step in and get address this stuff, and or Judge Roberts. Roberts needs to step up as well, and he's not doing his job at all. And and by the way, his name there is a John Roberts on the Epstein list. I'm sure you're aware too. So. So how much damage is being happening, getting back to the very first comment, because we haven't dealt with the real stuff that needs to be addressed now.
Well, guys, the state of affair of the country right now, I think everything that's going on can all be related back to the sea. There is definitely something fishy going on, and we're going to send you off with probably one of my greatest things to go, and that is to give you a big old nice... Thank you, Joe, so much for being on the show. Thank you for being the best part of Maha with Mike, which is our guest. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. And if anybody wants to follow him, guys, he is the host of the Joe Hoft Show. You guys can look him up online. So we're going to close with thank you. And thank you, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, for being on the show. Everybody, we will see you on Friday. Make America healthy again.